Thank you, President. Ladies and gentlemen, Rotarians. Well, I'm delighted to be here. I have to say that I come with sort of mixed feelings about what quite role I'm playing, whether as an honorary Rotarian or just a speaker that loosely connected to many of your activities. But this is an organisation that I've grown up meeting and seeing Rotarians almost wherever I've been, all over the world. And they have always been busy. And they've been busy supporting others to run functions and fundraising events. They've been busy very much doing their own things, but they've always been busy. And you're still very busy. And I suppose I'm not quite sure why the Rotary Club of Elgin was kind enough to ask me to join them, except for some of you may be aware my children went to school up that way. And I did spend quite a lot of time going up and down, and I do know quite a lot of people in the area. But that and the International Yachting Fellowship of Rotarians, which might be more obvious simply because I sail, it is nonetheless generous of you to ask somebody like me to become an honorary Rotarian. The Rotary Club in Elgin is also responsible for helping to found the Chaffinch Trust, set up by a friend of mine. The Chaffinch Trust, and I think the reason Elgin Rotary got behind it, is yes, it supports and encourages those working for people who live in disadvantaged areas, on low incomes who lack opportunities here in these islands and overseas. But it also understands and is keen to support a much more joined up approach between charities to make a much more cost-effective and efficient use of all the knowledge and the funds that are available in so many different ways across this country and across the world. And I think that is something that you as Rotarians who see such a wide range of charities in your own areas all have their strengths. And sometimes I feel you must feel frustrated that they don't work a little bit better together. And your perspective has a lot to offer in making those points to those who are essentially generous, concerned and committed, but maybe don't have that structure that you have to work with and through. Now, I believe that I was reasonably well educated through the Save the Children Fund, who really did learn how to work with others in order to make the best use of the knowledge that was available to support mothers and children. And it was that experience with the Save the Children, I think, that broadened my perception of how people needed to work together to achieve the same ends. But it was also their experience. I spent 3 weeks traveling through Africa, through Lesotho, Swaziland and Malawi, visiting their Stop Polio campaign in the early 1980s. And actually listening to Harvey's speech before about the Rotarians' impact on Stop Polio. It's a classic example of two organisations setting off to do something which was fundamentally important that actually hadn't heard of each other at that stage, because they were actually working in different parts of the world. But the Save the Children Fund ran these pilot projects for 5 years in order to really prove the process that was going to be necessary to deliver the polio vaccine. As he mentioned, the extended immunisation programme already existed, but the polio vaccine was more temperature sensitive than any of the other vaccinations. So it needed to have a much better structured delivery. And that meant, particularly in Africa with more distant rural communities to reach, managing that last mile of delivery and trying to get your mothers and children to appear at the same place at the same time. And just by way of comment, in Somalia, they found it almost impossible to do that, because they wouldn't take their children or let their wives go to the doctors or the clinics. But they would take them with them when they went their animals to be vetted. So we gave the vaccination to the vets. I call that joined-up thinking, I would say. So be a little bit more. But what Save the Children recognised and has been hugely grateful for is the way that Rotary picked up that challenge of stopping polio, because it had understood the way in which you could make a real difference and how well prepared you are as an organisation to apply that discipline and that logic in order to be able to deliver that polio vaccine over a much wider global reach. And the fact that it has worked so incredibly well is hugely to the credit of every individual member of Rotary and the way in which you function as a global organisation. Yes, there are numbers of individuals that have come as volunteers from these islands to help in India is hugely admirable. But it also reflects that there are a lot of other countries who've provided the equal numbers of volunteers in their parts of the world to do the same thing. And that common denominator was Rotary and its determination to drive what it knew it could achieve through those programs. And they've become more and more honed to the problems as they've through the years, knowing how to behave in different environments. A huge urban population, as you find so often in India, is quite a different community to get to as the very disparate populations in rural Africa. But you need that process in order to be able to make sure you get there. And that commitment to immunisation has nearly achieved what you set out to do. But it does have to be underlined that that immunisation will continue even after polio has hopefully been eradicated. And we need to be aware of that. We need to leave behind the understanding and the knowledge that they have to maintain that watchfulness and that coverage of vaccination for the future. A disease, if when you ever came across it, you realise how much it destroys people's lives, but how much people overcame as a direct result of that and what they achieved thereafter. One of the reasons it's worked so well is you've worked closely with the World Health Organization and those centres and disease control and prevention. And you've used that huge support that came from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to help you achieve those ends. Although with my other interest of logistics, I was somewhat frustrated to find that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation were approached for more money because they hadn't actually taken into consideration the costs of the logistics to deliver the vaccines. Anybody who'd ever done that could have told them that is not going to work without logistics. Rotary is for communities everywhere and understands the communities in which it's lived. And it is involved, of course, in many different projects. And one we've been hearing about just now, of course, is related to dementia. The Rotarians easing problems of dementia. And that will create memory cafes for patients and their carers. And as somebody who got involved with the Trust for Carers some time ago when nobody else had used the term, but is now used by both paid carers as well as those who are very much unpaid, I think those are just the sorts of things that allow carers the opportunity to speak to other carers, to have a little gap, to enable them to discuss with others the issues that they face. But it is also important for those with dementia to be allowed to that moment, that social connection, going back to seeing things, share in those pleasures that they had in the past. I suspect that, given that a lot of you are already friends of dementia, you know a lot of people who had been dealing with the disease either through direct knowledge of those suffering from dementia or those families dealing with it. And from a carer's perspective, added issues of the time spent in caring and the lack of understanding so often from others. This is about understanding your community, about understanding where you can offer help, the links with communities that will make a difference. And as I said before, the Rotarians get approached by so many different organizations that you recognize have a real role to play. Understand what that means in your local communities. So that local individual link is key to making those sort of larger national programs work really well. I'm also delighted that Rotary is also an approved activity provider for the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. And I hope that goes back quite a long time, because this is a good place to start. When we talk about young people being involved in caring roles and understanding what the caring roles are meaning, Duke of Edinburgh's have always had that as part of their service, as part of the things that they do during their award process, at whatever level you start. And those voluntary activities, and here within their Interact Club, will help spread that knowledge and understanding of where they can use their talents and skills most widely. By the way, some of those will be young carers, and some of them already have a very good understanding of what is needed. And in passing, one of the early bits of research done about young carers was that 80% of young carers will end up in professional caring roles, which in some ways is extraordinary, given what that must have meant to their young lives. But they have a real understanding and empathy for caring, and they continue to do it throughout their lives. The other issue which young people are critical to, but is a subject which is more difficult perhaps to bring together, is the peace and conflict resolution matters. And those matters are of a particular issue to Rotary as a global organization. Your toast includes the words peace the world over. And as an organization which is present in so many different parts of the world, that is entirely appropriate. And the scholarships available for students to undertake a master's degree in peace studies in one of 6 Rotary peace centres across the world is really important. And of course, the one in Bradford is one of the oldest, and therefore one which you have supported most. It's not an easy subject to gather together into a master's degree, and I think your perspective will hugely assist the definition of that as a subject. I see and I know what a difference Rotarians can make, and make here in the UK and Ireland as well as overseas. And with over 1,700 Rotary clubs here in Great Britain and Ireland, supporting the wide range of projects that you do, and both by fundraising for those projects and for others, and for your hands-on service. As I said at the beginning, it is little wonder that Rotary members are busy. And that's, for many of you, includes day jobs as well. We don't often get the opportunity to say thank you to groups like Rotary, because you're a really difficult group to get together in one place. In fact, physically impossible, you could argue. But I will see some of that walking around the Rotary Showcase exhibition later, which I'm much looking forward to doing. But it does give me the opportunity to say thank you to some of you. As I say, I've grown up meeting and seeing Rotarians at work, and you are an organization which has an ability to go on growing and developing, and you have an ability to spot the things which are really important to the communities in which you work. I hope that events like this do not just inform you, which is important, but support you and each other in the ambitions that you have for your own clubs and as individuals. I often get asked, what can I do to help? Well, the answer is having eyes and ears and listening to the people around you can often make the biggest difference. And that could mean your neighbour will be as big an impact if it helps them get through a problem as it does for those much further afield or in bigger numbers. But you do bigger numbers really well because you're actually very well organised at it. So thank you and congratulations to all of you. And as I say, it's a pleasure to be here. At least the honorary title gives me, I think, some reason for being here, but I'm very grateful. Thank you.